Okay, so in this video I'm going to install PostTrans XML API for Sage 50. Here you can see we're on the PostTrans website. We've actually gone to this menu option here, and here's a nice button here. We're going to press that, so that's going to download the install program. And while that's downloading, I'm just going to start Sage 50 off. One of the prerequisites is that Sage 50 client is up and running on this PC. And it's also important that you create a user account for PostTrans to use. Without that, you will get all sorts of problems. If you try and use the same user as someone else and they're logged in, or the import tries to log in, then Sage 50 does not allow two people to be logged in as the same user. So it must have an account set up. So I'm just going to go into the demonstration data. So by default, we suggest that you go to, I think it's settings, access rights, and create a user in here called PT1. Let's give it just a password of X. It's allowed to do everything. Okay. Right, now let's install PostTrans XML API. Just going to double click on that and run up the install. It's just a simple case of, I think it's running twice, nexting everything. Now, of course, it's going to ask in a minute where to install the program. It's a good idea. Well, no, it's not. It's a excellent idea to make sure the directory is actually on the backup system. So when it comes to this bit here, instead of putting on your local hard drive, I would rather hope it's actually stored on a network drive, which is shared. So if this PC fails in emergency, you just run the same program from another PC. It is a .NET program. Most new Windows installations have all the prerequisites to run this program. So it basically requires Sage 50 and a modern computer. So let's press next. Obviously we're going to run Sage 50. So Sage 50 and 200 standard share the same option here. It's going to next that, and it will now install the files. There's not a great deal it installs. Now the first thing it's going to do is ask me what this installation is going to work with. So Sage 50, click on there, and the program has fired itself up, and it's now taken me to the settings page. So the first thing on the settings page is to select the default company you want it to work with. Well, we were just in the demonstration data, so I'm going to select the demonstration data. Now you can see here PostTrans has given everything a 4 alpha 2 numerical number system. So demo 01 is what PostTrans is going to know that account as. That Sage 50 company. And we gave it the user PT1 and password X. Okay, so that's important we do that. You can't dismiss this until that's done. Next, we have the import directory, and because we loaded it into PostTrans x86, that's where the import directory is at present. The examples are in there, so we're going to come to that, back to that in a minute. You might want to install it and then alter this at a later date. Down here you can turn on and off automatic importing, and whether it should be shut down between 8 and it's actually shutting down, it's run between 8 and 10 during the day, so you don't conflict with any backup software. Now normally when it imports an XML file, it puts it into imported XML subdirectory. There is another one called failed XML, and it actually edits the XML file and puts in a comment at the top containing the error if there was an error. So it goes into the failed XML directory. When it does that, it can send you or another user or a whole variety of users, if it's a distribution list, of an email to tell you that there's a file in that folder. That file can then be opened. You can easily edit it with a text editor to correct any fault. You could even delete a line if it was suspect, import it into Sage 50 and then go in and re-add the line or something just to resolve the errors. Now it can suck the data from an IMAPI email account such as Gmail or an SFTP download directory. So many options there. Let's press OK, and that's just going to tell me that it's going to restart the software. So unfortunately, it doesn't restart itself automatically, but let's just go in, and we should see in our startup here, PostTrans for XML API. Start it up again. Next, it's asking me for the account it wants to run under. So if we were starting a new account off, we would press the new account button. I've already got an account and I've remembered my account name. This could be your email address, but the important thing is you pop in your password if you've already got an account with us into here. Otherwise, create it up above. Having difficulty to talk, think, and enter my password. Okay, so we can see there it's linked to my account. Now, at any point, we can access our online account by selecting Buy License, and that brings you to this window. You've already logged in with the software, so it takes you straight to it. Now, this is my test account, so there's a lot of different products on here, but that would normally be this entry down here, and it would normally have a link down the bottom here that says Purchase License. You can go through, enter your credit card details, instant activation. When it comes back to this screen, there is then a link that says cancel. You can cancel the next subscription. So when you install the software, you can test it with the Sage 50 demonstration data without paying. If you want to try it out further, then I'm afraid you're going to have to take out a month's subscription. You're only risking 50 quid or whatever it is, and you can cancel at any point, or the subsequent subscriptions at any point. So we're in automatic mode because we know we've got the automatic ticked here. We could press the import button to try and import something. I'm just going to go through one of the two of the menus. Here you can see we've got access to the system settings, and we also have browse import directory. So we click on that. That's then taken us to the import directory. And we can see there's a fair number of folders there. As I said before, there's the failed and the imported. But there's also an example folder. Let's just open that in a new window, and we're going to have a look at an example, and hopefully we're going to test it and see if it imports. What could we use? We could bring in a sales invoice. Let's right click on here and send it to our favorite notepad text editor. Blimey, that looks a lot here, doesn't it? So XML file, very simple, very simple. So PostTrans is for start looking for a tag and an end tag. Everything has an end. It's very much like HTML here. To say this section here contains Sage 50 data. Next, we have an optional settings section, which I could delete. Basically, that overrides certain settings in the settings bit that we just set in our window. You can see there it sets the company name. So we're going to delete that because chances are your installation won't match or have that code. So now what we're going to do is when we import that, it will use the default company we set earlier. It's very unlikely that count test 01 will exist in your Sage installation. Let's just go through. Yeah, ABS01. Let's change that to ABS01. So as I said, I guess it's 001, ABS01, or is it AB? Oh, it goes. Oh, there's a good question. Is it? Are they 2 zeros? Yeah, it must be 2 zeros. So that's set the account code. Now that's a sales invoice. If I change that to a SC, it would be a credit note. Very simple stuff. Let's just change the date there. So anything, any other reason. So yeah, we can see there we've got various information on the header. And then we've got one line here. It says please, there's a text line, followed by a stock item we're going to sell, followed by 7 hours at £60 with a carriage item and a line of information. Okay, let's save that down. The important thing is that we realize that everything is basically like HTML. It's very simple. Don't get too hung up on XML. It's very simple. Right, let's minimize that and rearrange the screen slightly. So there we've got our import directory. There's our examples. There's the importer running. So what I'm going to do is just drag that into the import directory, and hopefully on the left hand side you should see it's detected it and created sales invoice 85 for ABS01. So let's go back into Sage 200, and it's now, sorry, what did we say that was? 85. Let's just oh, there we go. Rearrange that, resort it. And there's our item. I believe we had 7 hours, carriage, calculator, and 2 descriptions on there. So very simply imported and tested. Passed our test.